Should you get your guests to sign a contract before you interview them on your show? Should you put a disclaimer on the financial advice or the health related advice that you're sharing on your podcast? These are some common questions that a lot of podcasters have, but there is very little information or very few resources that can help you with this. So today we are going to talk about all of these podcast legal considerations that you need to keep in mind if you're running a podcast. Hello, my name is Dilip and welcome to TPU TV. This is a channel where I share a lot of podcasting related information. So if you're looking for any practical advice on podcasting, then this is a channel where you'll be able to find all of this. Today's episode is going to be a very important one, irrespective of what genre you are in or how long you have been into podcasting, because it is about everything legal related to podcasting. A little while back, I was on a consultation call with one of these clients of mine, and one of the questions that he asked me was that if he's bringing influential guests or guests who are well known onto his podcast, should he be getting them to sign a consent form just so that he doesn't get called out for infringement of intellectual property? Now, this is a very important question that as a podcaster, every one of us should be asking. Not just this, there are a lot many other legal aspects to podcasting which a lot of us podcasters don't really consider. I'll share a small story with you. Sometime back when I was running these niche affiliate websites, I bought one of these domains called as taylorswiftguitarchords.com, and I had built my website on this domain and I had started to earn some money from some affiliate products. That is when I got this email from one of these law firms telling me that they were the attorneys for Taylor Swift and that the term Taylor Swift was copyrighted and hence I should take down the domain immediately or face legal consequences. Now, I did all of my due diligence. I went about checking how genuine this email was, and I could find a website for this law firm and they had a lot of these top clients. So I reached out to the domain company and spoke to them about this, and they agreed that Taylor Swift is a trademarked term, so I cannot use that in my domain, and hence it is better that I take down that domain name. So consequently, I took down that domain name. Now, these are some legal issues that unknowingly we can get into. And as podcasters, we are prone to a lot of these legal issues. Hence, it is important for us to understand some of the legal aspects of podcasting so that we don't land in any such legal soups. So in today's episode, we will go a little more deeper into this important aspect of podcasting, which is the legal and copyright related considerations that we as a podcaster should know. We'll be looking at some of these terms and we'll understand as to why adhering to this consideration is crucial to all of us podcasters. So let's get started. So before we get started, what are these legal considerations and why is it important? The legal and copyright considerations play a very important role in any form of content marketing, not just podcasting. And ignoring any of these legal obligations can lead to a lot of potential risks and consequences. Like, for example, violating the intellectual property rights by using any of these copyrighted materials without permission can result in legal action, damaged reputation, and at times a lot of financial liabilities. Now, I'm sure that is the last thing that you as a podcaster want. So it is important that we respect intellectual property, not only from protecting the other person's work, but also from safeguarding our own content, because our content is also in a way copyright protected. So first, let us understand what intellectual property is, and specifically from a podcasting perspective. Understanding intellectual property is important primarily because most of the legal aspects will in some way relate to intellectual property rights. And primarily when we are talking about content creation or podcasting, it in a way will relate to intellectual property rights. Now, intellectual property can include a lot of things, like for example, copyrights, trademarks, the fair use of properties. All of these things come under the intellectual property rights. Now, copyright, for example, grants exclusive rights to a specific content or a specific creation. Now, this creation is considered as an original work, like for example, music, writings, podcasts. All of these comes under the copyright intellectual rights. And then there are trademarks, which basically protects brands, logos, etc. And fair use allows limited use of these copyrighted material under specific circumstances, such as for criticism, for commentary, or for educational purposes. So there is this fair use policy under which you will be able to use these copyrighted materials, but only in a very limited context. So when it comes to copyrights, what are the copyright considerations that we as podcasters should know about? And how do these concepts apply to podcasting? So as a podcaster, your content is also protected by copyright from the moment it is created. And hence it is important to understand that using any copyrighted materials, like for example, music, sound effects, or maybe excerpts from other podcasts, YouTube videos, etc., will need proper licensing and permission, because that is a copyrighted content that you are using in a copyrighted creation of yours. So it is important that you understand that you should not be using any of these without a proper license or permission. Now, obtaining licenses for music will help you ensure that you're using that particular artist's work and compensating them for their creativity, though it might not be a monetary compensation, but at least crediting them for their work. Similarly, that is why we always recommend using royalty-free music in your podcast or whatever it is that you're creating. Now, determining whether a work is protected by copyright can be sometimes challenging, but the general rule of thumb is that any work that is created by someone else that can be categorized under creativity is likely to be protected under copyright policies unless it falls within a public domain or has some specific permissions, like for example the Creative Commons license. Now, if you are in doubt, it is the best to go and talk to the creator, take their permission, or maybe consult a legal professional to ensure that you're using that content lawfully and legally. Now, when we're talking about legal aspects, so we also need to look at some legal obligations that you as a podcaster and your podcast has. Now, apart from these copyright considerations, there are a lot many other legal obligations also that you need to fulfill. Now, these obligations might be about complying with privacy laws and regulations if you're handling personal information or information about a guest, or you're gathering information about your listeners, especially if you're conducting interviews or you're collecting data from your listeners. These kind of obligations becomes extremely important. Hence, it also becomes important that you understand and familiarize yourselves with the law of the land, because that is where all the jurisdiction is going to happen. So you need to know what laws are applicable in that particular country or city that you are recording and publishing your podcast. Now, additionally, you might want to include disclaimers in your podcast, because that is very crucial, particularly if you are running a podcast which offers financial advice or maybe health related advice. In recent terms, you would have heard about a case where SEBI happened to impose a penalty on one of these YouTube content creators who was offering financial advice. So when you're offering financial advice or maybe health related advices, it is important that you put a disclaimer there to ensure that you clarify that your content is only for informational purposes and not a substitute for any professional advice. Now, this will also help set the basic expectations and limitations for your listeners, who will then not hold you accountable for anything that happens because of following that particular advice. And it will also help in promoting transparency and will also help mitigate any potential legal issues. That brings us to another very important point, which is music licensing in podcasting. Now, music is something that we all use in our podcast, and it helps us give a unique perspective to our podcast. But as a podcaster, you need to keep in mind that you're not supposed to be using any music that is copyrighted. Using royalty-free music is the best option, and you can always pay for this music without paying a huge sum as royalty. And since this is legally acquired music, it is something that is recommended. Now, Creative Commons licenses are available for different levels of permission depending upon the specific license. If there is a certain music that is under the Creative Commons license, and if it is free to be used without attributing the creator, you can always go and use that. But commercial licenses will help you use a copyrighted music, because that obtains all of the necessary rights that are required directly from the artist or maybe from a licensing platform. Now, one of the most common questions that a lot of podcasters ask about music is particularly about trending music from some of these music albums or from some of these movies. Is it legal to use them? The one word answer is no. You are not supposed to be using this, because all such music is protected by copyrights, and you will unnecessarily be inviting problems for yourself by using such music in any form of content that you're creating, because it is without authorization. Now, a lot of creators ask this question as to how will somebody find out that I am using a copyrighted music. Now, the fact is that it is difficult to find out, but if you're unlucky and you get caught, then you're going to face unnecessary legal issues, which can be a lot of stress for you as a creator. So I would recommend not taking that route and not using copyrighted music unless you have permissions to use that. Finding legal and affordable music for your podcast today is not difficult. It used to be difficult until about 10 years back, but today there are a lot of websites out there that can help you get good quality copyright free music which you can use in your podcast. Platforms like there are Soundstripe, Epidemic Music and Artlist, they all provide a wide range of quality music and effects that are suitable for podcasts, and you can use them. Now, I very recently found this website called hooper.ai. Especially if you're from India, you will love this website. It has a lot of music, a lot of sound effects that you can use, and all of these music are pretty new and trending, so that way you get the latest music. All of these are copyright free. They have very affordable plans. You will be able to find a link to this website on the show notes. You might want to go and check them out. And they offer some very nice music that you can use in your social media posts, in podcasts, in YouTube videos, and all of these. Something that you might want to keep in mind is that most of these platforms have two different forms of payment. One is either a subscription form of payment, or the second one is maybe a pay per track. So you can use whatever suits you, but both of these are pretty affordable, and I think it helps you stay on the right side of law. Now that brings us to the last point, which is the legal obligations when it comes to guest interviews and collaborations. Now, this is a very important aspect related to podcasting, specifically if you are interviewing guests on your show. And this is another gray area where there is very little information that is available online, or for that matter anywhere. Now, one of the common questions that most podcasters ask is, should you make your guests sign a consent form? And if you decide to do that, will the guest agree to come on your show if they have to go through all of those legal processes? Now, these questions are very valid, and it is possible that if you ask your guest to sign maybe a guest consent form, they might just drop off and they might not come on the interview. But that's something that you will have to live with. You either end up on the wrong side of the law or maybe follow the legal procedure. And if the guest is understanding, I don't think there is a reason why they will refuse to come onto your show. So it is better that you get your guests to sign the consent form if you think that the guest is that influential, that valuable, and in future it can be a problem. But what I also do is I take a very soft consent from them on an email when I send them an email inviting them to be a part of my show. That is also something that you can do. But whichever way you do it, I would recommend that if you're featuring guest interviews or maybe collaborations on your podcast, it is crucial that you protect yourself legally. So obtain maybe signed release forms or consent forms or whatever it is that you do, so that your guest grants you the permission to use their voice or their stories or their opinions on your podcast, and in whichever form you decide to use them. So these guest release forms usually outline all of these requirements, and when the guest signs it, it pretty much takes care of all of that. So if you want to use a guest release form, you can always do that. If you want a template, I can offer you a free template. You will be able to find a link to this template in the show notes. Go ahead, click on that link, sign up, and you'll be able to download a free template that I had created some time back so that I can send it to my guests. But when you're doing all of this, it is important that you keep in mind that these are sensitive topics and you might want to handle this with care when you're dealing with your guests. Now, if you're looking for more information about these legal considerations from a podcasting perspective, I would recommend that you do a quick search on Google. You'll be able to find a lot of websites out there which will provide you information in bits and bits, but there is no concrete resource that is available online. But all of this information is valuable. You can go through them and then do a due diligence on your own and then follow whatever you feel is right for your podcast. So adhering to these legal and copyright best practices is something that is crucial for you as a podcaster and for your podcast as well. So it is important that you understand and learn things about intellectual properties, licenses, copyrights, trademarks, etc. because this will help you ensure that you are always staying on the right side of the law. Remember that this episode is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for any legal advice. If you have any specific legal concerns, I would recommend that you consult with a good lawyer, a professional lawyer who specializes in media and entertainment law. So, to conclude this episode, I'll give you 7 things that you need to keep in mind from a legal consideration perspective, especially for podcasts. Number 1, avoid defaming others unnecessarily on your show. Number 2, don't create deceptive or misleading information, especially if that advice is related to financial or maybe health related aspects. Number 3, offer disclaimers wherever required. Number 4, ensure that you're taking consent from your guests and making them aware as to how you're going to use that particular episode where you are interviewing them, how you're going to use the information that is being shared by them on your episode. Number 5, don't use creatives and materials that are copyrighted or trademarked. Use only royalty-free music. Number 6, ensure that you're checking for trademarks and other intellectual property rights when you're picking a podcast name for yourself. And number 7, ensure that your website has a privacy policy and a terms and conditions page which explains everything related to your podcast and how you are collecting information and using all of the information on your podcast. I hope you enjoyed the information that I shared in this video today. If you did, then don't forget to give a thumbs up to this video because that will help in this video being discovered by others who are looking for similar information. And if you're new to this channel, then you might want to subscribe to this show and click the bell notification so that you stay updated with all of the latest episodes that I release. I release a video every Thursday on this channel, so don't forget to come back again the next Thursday for my latest video. And if you're new to podcasting, then you might want to visit the podcastinguniversity.com/free-guide and join my free course on how to start a podcast. This is free. You'll be able to find a link to this course in the description box below. Go ahead, click the link and join the free course. And if you need a free template for a guest consent form, then you'll be able to find that on the podcastinguniversity.com/112. The link is also there in the description box below. Go ahead, click the link and download your free guest consent form. That is all that I have for this video. I'll be back again the next week with another interesting conversation around podcasting. Until then, keep watching TPU TV. This is goodbye from Dilip.